Welcome to Grab or Stab. I'm Matt McFarland. Here we grab if it's good and we stab if it's not. Today we'll be talking about the 9th and the newest movie in the franchise, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, released in 2022 only on Netflix, a sequel to the 1974 original movie. But before we get into all that, let me explain how decisions are made around this place on whether or not to grab or stab a movie. First of all, it comes down to how good are the kills. Second, the characters. Third, how did the movie affect either the genre or the franchise at the time? And lastly, how scary is it? Directed by David Blue Garcia, the latest little journey about an overweight lumberjack obsessed with facial fashion is set about 50 years after the original movie. The plot revolves around a group of young entrepreneurs who have purchased an abandoned ghost town in Texas. They travel to the town with a goal of auctioning off the properties. Following the auction, they set out to turn the town into a utopian society centered around their own views on how the world should be. When they get to the town, though, they quickly realize a few people still live there, and some of them don't take too kindly to new folk. If you're wondering how this movie fits into the timeline of the Chainsaw movies, this is a direct sequel to the original film. Think like Halloween 2018. However, they don't necessarily want you to assume that the original sequels didn't happen. Out of respect to the other films, the creators of this movie wanted it to be up to the viewer whether they included the previous sequels in the timeline or not. But like I said, kind of imagine a timeline similar to Halloween 2018. Due to the lack of success and the amount of time it took to release 2017's Leatherface, Lionsgate lost the film rights, and in 2018, Legendary Pictures purchased the rights. Legendary decided to portray an older Leatherface in a sequel to the original. Like I mentioned, there are some similarities between this movie and the newest rendition of the Halloween franchise. Halloween also decided that the newest films would include a post-traumatic original final girl, Laurie Strode, which is the same route this movie decided to go here, including a much older Sally Hardesty, our final girl from the original Chainsaw movie. Sally's character in this film does have some similarities to Laurie Strode, as Sally, because of the events in the original movie, is now a grizzled Texas Ranger who's been hunting Leatherface for 50 years. Speaking of Leatherface this go around is played by Mark Burnham. Mark was partially casted for the role because of his age and his large 6'4" frame, which matches up very close to the size of the portrayal of the original Leatherface by Gunnar Hansen. They wanted Mark to portray the character very similar to the original, however a much older version who at times had to step away from the action and rest. And you'll notice that small detail occasionally in the movie. Overall, I thought Mark did a good job portraying the character, but there are some flaws in the writing, and we'll talk about that more a little bit later. But what's not happening later is us getting into the movie, so let's get that started. Once again, the beginning of a Chainsaw movie starts with a sensual John Larroquette narration.
In the summer of 1973, a few miles outside of Austin, Texas, 5 youths were attacked in a grisly and gruesome fashion by an unidentified madman.
Johnny Boy is telling us what happened in the original film, but this time it's coming from a TV documentary that Lila's watching in a Chainsaw novelty gas station while she picks up some snacks. We all know what kind of omen a gas station in a horror movie is. Lila's played by Elsie Fisher, who wasn't even 20 yet during filming, but has already had a very successful start to her career, being nominated for a Golden Globe, voice acting in some large animated movies like the Despicable Me franchise, and acting in several other big projects. And not unlike Jim Cito in the original, we have another kind of rough, crazy old man working here. The man tells Lila how the final girl from the original movie, Sally Hardesty, survived and is now a Texas Ranger.
She must have looked for that maniac for more than 30, 40 years.
So she found him.
He was wearing a mask. Not easy to locate someone if you don't know what they look like.
We're 9 movies into this, and I've actually never thought about that before. Lila's then helped out of the store by her older sister, Melody, played by Sarah Yarkin. They tell the old fella that they're headed to a town named Harlow, and he responds that everybody's heard about them.
Gentry fuckers.
Oh look, a Tesla. These kids must be Texas Chainsaw movie fans because they weren't about to run out of gas in the middle of Texas like in the other movies. As they prepare to leave, we meet our other victims. We've got Dante Spivey, played by Jacob Lattimore, and his girlfriend Ruth, played by Nell Hudson. Well, someone else lives around here, blaring some loud music in a big truck and just smelling of some good old America. Another person arrives at the gas station, and we immediately get the vibe that Melody might be one of those creamy, soft-handed, whiny Gen Zers.
Who has such a small dick they need to walk around in public with a fucking gun? Like, I mean, is he compensating for something? Come on.
The new guy plays it cool and gives a little jab back.
Sorry, big gun makes you uncomfortable.
I've seen bigger.
The local Texan's name is Richter, played by Mo Dunford. The group leaves, and along their journey to Harlow, we find out the reason for the trip. Turns out Melody and Dante are social media influencers who are looking to breathe a new life into a Texas ghost town which they recently purchased. They are hoping the hype they've generated on social media will influence others to join them and live in this new town with possibilities for future expansions.
We can own all of this. Call it Dontopia.
What?
What? Dontopia.
How long have you been sitting on that?
We also find out that Lila's only on this trip because her sister Melody didn't want to leave her back in the big city alone because of some recent struggles she's been having. Later on down the road, the group gets stopped by the local authorities, who at first come across possibly being another group of crooked cops in a chainsaw movie, but actually mostly just want to introduce themselves and lay down some ground rules. Welcome to Harlow, population 1974, tipping its cap to the year the original movie came out. The group arrives in town and Dante is feeling some kind of way.
Oh!
Okay, but why are you guys here exactly? Because I think we're all still a little bit confused.
So Harlow is a ghost town.
Yes, but we have a vision for this place. All it needs is young blood, people like us tired of the big city, looking for a fresh start.
Also, shout out to production designer Michael Perry for designing this entire town from scratch, including the gas station from earlier. 40 facades were created, which included 3 interior sets. Much of the brickwork you see was hand-carved from foam, and Michael, who's worked on several productions, was shocked at how good the carpentry was on this particular production. Look at that theater. That town hall looks historic. Oh shit, is that? Yeah, that's the fella from the gas station. Turns out Richter's Dante's contractor, who's over the past week been giving the buildings quite a bit of a facelift to prepare for the auction. Luckily for them, Richter's pretty chill and tells them as long as they pay him, it's fine. Richter might live in the sticks, but he seems to be a little more aware of what's going on than even the group is.
So you guys are what, like a cult?
We're idealistic individuals who want to build a better world.
Yeah, that's a cult.
Lila then notices that one of the buildings has a Confederate flag on the outside. With the potential buyers on the way, Dante knows he better get that shit down ASAP, so Dante and Mel head inside the building to do so. This isn't any old building though, it's the Harlow Orphanage. After unsuccessfully getting the flag down, Mel and Dante get a little surprise. Here they're greeted by Virginia Guinea McCumber, played by Alice Kriege. Guinea's been running the orphanage for 50 years, which now only has one person left.
Wish I'd known y'all were coming. I'd put my face on.
Melody and Dante tell the woman that the bank reclaimed the property months ago and that she was supposed to leave. The old woman insists she settled with the bank and still has the title to prove it. Melody and Dante continue to insist that she's wrong. After the old woman says a few remarks Dante doesn't like, the two are fed up and call the police to resolve the situation. Faced with possibly being kicked out of her home of 50 years, the stress becomes too much to handle, which alerts her last child living in the home. You smell that? That's not a child, that's the body odor of a giant 6'4" man-child. And yeah, as you can guess, it's Leatherface. Guinea insists to Melody that she can't leave because the last child remaining doesn't do well outside and she needs to be here for him. And I think we kind of agree. The cops arrive and seem surprised Guinea's still there as they said she was supposed to leave weeks ago. In a real panic now, Guinea throws up and has some sort of a heart attack. Guinea's carried to the van by the big fella. As the police van prepares to leave, the bus arrives for the auction. Melody now feels terrible about Guinea and insists that she rides with them to the hospital. Ruth, though, convinces Melody to stay for the auction and she goes with them instead. The bus empties and the visitors seem impressed with the town. Amongst the visitors is Catherine, who works at the bank that helped finance Dante and Melody's plan. Now inside the police van, things aren't going so well.
Sheriff, I think she croaked.
And Ruth quickly informs Melody what happened. Leatherface frantically tries to help Guinea to no avail. While doing so, the officer sitting in the back grabs Leatherface's hand and quickly realizes it was a bad idea. As the cop reaches for his gun, Leatherface snaps his arm right in half, exposing his bone. Leather then repeatedly stabs him in the neck with his own bone. A pretty creative and badass kill to get things rolling. Amongst the chaos, the officer's gun goes off, hitting the sheriff right in the neck, which causes the van to veer off the road and crash into a combine. Back in Harlow, the town's auction's going down and Lila has a little chat with Richter to find out his story. While chatting, Lila notices one of Richter's big-ass guns and Lila shares that she's been shot before. Lila's backstory is of a girl who was a victim of a school shooting. This of course still haunts her every day, but Lila also talks about what a weight it is that she survived and now everyone expects her to do something special with her life. Here we not only find out more about Lila, but that Richter seems like a pretty decent guy. Melody shares the news of the old lady passing with Dante and she feels responsible. Coupled with not liking Dante's response to the news, she now wants to ditch the entire plan and leave Harlow. Back at the crash scene, Ruth's pretty beat up and looks around to examine the wreckage. She uses the police radio to alert someone of the crash, and while doing so, she notices that Leatherface is cutting Guinea's fucking face off with a broken piece of glass. This is the key piece of information she also relays over the radio, which plays a key role in the rest of the story. The old man at the convenience store from earlier hears this and quickly realizes, oh shit, he's back. According to writer and producer Fede Alvarez, when Leatherface wears Guinea's face, it's symbolic in the fact that Leatherface is essentially enacting a revenge tour in her name from here on out in the movie. Leatherface walks over to the driver's side of the van, puts the sheriff out for good, then heads to the other side to see if Ruth's doing all right. Ruth tries to escape, but instead gets split across her belly by Leatherface using the broken piece of glass again. Here we also get that shot you might remember from some of the posters of the movie. Peekaboo!
Ah, fuck! I gotta walk back to Harlow? I'm an old man!
Fun fact, a few weeks before filming this scene, a hailstorm came through the area, killing all of the sunflower petals, which gave us this unique look in the movie. Back in Harlow, the group's now barbecuing and listening to music, because nobody wants to get killed on an empty stomach, right? Melody's getting ready to leave, but because Richter heard the old lady's dead, he takes everyone's car keys until they can prove that they rightfully kicked the old lady out of her own home legally. But, well shit, Dante can't find his paperwork to prove it, so they head inside the orphanage to see if Guinea really did still have the title. And turns out she did, and Dante, that's gonna cost you. Leatherface is now back in town and back home with them and gets his revenge on Dante, hacking him across the cheek with a meat cleaver, which may be a pretty run-of-the-mill kill, but I like the creativity in how it was shot through the perspective of the swinging door, giving you small glimpses of the kill. Melody notices the two and hides upstairs. Leatherface says fuck it, the old leather's coming back, baby, and breaks into the wall in his room, which is hiding his chainsaw from the original murders. A little cool fact here is that this chainsaw was actually one of the chainsaws used in the original film. It often took 20 to 30 minutes to start up because of how old it was. Kind of like my bowels when my old ass wakes up in the morning. Turns out Dante's actually still alive, so he stumbles out of the orphanage to get help. Because it's now pouring rain, the town's visitors have turned the bus into a party bus and are getting saucy inside and fishing for likes on their social media stories. Richter and Catherine notice Dante and go to see what's wrong. Uh-oh, that's not good. Richter gets locked and loaded and heads inside the orphanage. Richter makes his way upstairs where Melody's hiding. Leatherface hears him coming and hides behind the door for a surprise attack. Melody tips him off of the ambush with a mirror, but that only delays the inevitable as Leatherface turns Richter's kneecap into a geometry project, then shoves his neck into a broken piece of the window. But right before Richter's dead, he tosses the car keys to Melody. Then in one of the more graphic executions in the franchise, Leatherface repeatedly bashes Richter's skull in, smattering blood all over Melody in the process. And I'm sorry, I wish I could show this one, but there is no way in hell YouTube would let me. We're then back at the car crash scene where a car arrives. A woman gets out of the vehicle to investigate, and this isn't just some random police officer. This is Sally Hardesty, the final girl from the original movie, who, like I mentioned before, is now a Texas Ranger and has been hunting Leatherface for decades. The original Sally Hardesty was played by Marilyn Burns, but because Marilyn died in 2014, she's played this time around by B. Olin Fuhr, who's been in quite a few movies, but most of her career has been spent performing in Irish and English theaters. Sally eventually finds the skinned woman and immediately knows this is the moment she's been waiting for. Back at the orphanage, Melody gets ballsy enough to attempt an escape, but not so fast though, as Leatherface has learned some ninja shit after all these years. Hey yo Leather, I think your floor has got some termites, bro. Melody eventually makes her way through a crawl space, gets covered in a massive load of human shit, which had to be put on her every day going forward when they filmed, but eventually she escapes through the crawl space with the help of her sister. The two immediately run to the party bus, hand the keys to the driver, and hope that they can get the fuck out of town. Leather ain't letting that happen though, and the moronic bus driver stops to say hello, giving him umbrella or just killing himself, I guess. He technically does come back in the van, but it's just his head this time. And here we go, like a bowl in a china shop.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a whim here and say he doesn't care. Oh, fuck. In compliments to @TheRealRonDonJuan, we get to see the Instagram live comments all while this absolute massacre is going down. And these comments are exactly what you would expect them to be. Also, side note, if you look really close at the usernames commenting on the live stream, you'll see a few Easter eggs. Now, if you like blood and kills in your horror movies, then hold on to your butts because you're about to get served up a supersizing of that shit. Limbs are being tossed to the side, Leather gets a double chainsaw shish kebab, people are getting sliced and diced left and right, and while this is going down, Melody and Lila attempt to escape through a hatch in the roof. Remember Catherine from the bank? Well, Leatherface is still upset about those overdraft fees and cuts her in half as she's climbing out of the window. I thought this was a really creative shot and a solid cap to the carnage inside of the bus. Her intestines slowly sliding out of the window too was a nice little touch. Though I could do without the flashing lights, I thought overall with the blue lighting and the storm outside, this entire sequence was fantastic. The two do escape out of the roof and are greeted by Sally. Sally, though, knows that these two are the perfect bait to execute her plan, so she locks them in her car until she's able to kill Leatherface.
50 years I've been waiting for this night, just to see him again.
Shotgun in hand, Sally heads off to hunt Leatherface down once and for all, and Leatherface is even nice enough to tell her where he is.
Say my name. Say you know me. Say you know what you did to my friends.
Shoot him, Sally! Shoot him, Sally! Shoot him! I have to give a shout out to effects artists Todd Tucker and Martin Assels, who along with their team created Leatherface's mask. This time around they opted for a sad look, much to the initial dismay of Legendary, who really wanted a scarier, more emotionless face. Legendary eventually gave in, and I'm glad they did. This is easily one of my favorite masks in the franchise. Leatherface then walks right past Sally and makes his way to the others. This is a pivotal moment in the relationship between these two characters. This is a clear indication of the arduous dichotomy between them. Sally views them as almost a pair because of the incidents they shared 50 years ago. However, Sally's obsession with Leatherface is not reciprocated, as he clearly doesn't remember her or he's moved on. Right before he can kill Lila though, Sally musters up the courage to finally shoot him, but it's not enough as Leatherface escapes into the shadows of the buildings. The tension builds as you can hear a chainsaw revving in the distance. Then as footsteps grow louder and louder from the darkness, Leatherface rushes Sally, blocking her shot in the process. Sally does get a stab in, but it's not enough as the saw goes right into Sally. Leatherface hoists her up and enjoys himself another bloody shower. Melody and Lila, now armed with Sally's keys, attempt to run Leatherface over, but with no luck. In the process, they crash into Richter's shop. Lila grabs Richter's assault rifle, but as she doesn't know how to use it, is unable to shoot him. As they stumble out onto the street, Leatherface has an opportunity to kill Lila, but misses before eventually getting shot at by Sally as she's taking her last breaths. Sally loads the shotgun before taking that last breath. Lila then decides enough's enough and heads inside the theater to hunt this motherfucker down. In a strange turn of events for Leatherface's character, he creates a trap with his chainsaw which enables another ambush attack, causing them both to fall into a flooded area in the building. The actors said filming the scene was terrible. Although the water was heated, it was winter when they filmed this, so getting in and out of the water was extremely cold. As Lila emerges from the water and almost gets to the shotgun, Leatherface gives us his second ninja move and heaves the saw into her legs. Lila's now like, well, I'm dead, but not so fast as Melody rear naked chokes the bastard, giving Lila just enough time to shoot him twice. As Leather's on the precipice of falling back into the water, Melody's in a complete rage now and Mike Tyson uppercuts Leatherface with his own chainsaw, sending him falling back into the water, where he dies? Little fact about this sequence was that this is an inadvertent homage to the ending of the second Texas Chainsaw movie when Stretch kills Chop Top. They didn't even realize this until well after this scene was shot. The sun is now up and the two put on some feel-good music to forget about the fact that there are literally dozens of dead bodies in the bus next to them. Man, this town smells worse than back home. Autopilot, take us back to Austin, Texas, please.
I changed my mind, actually. I'll move here with you. Fuck off.
Ah shit, he's still alive! As Leatherface grabs Melody out of the car and decapitates her right in front of her sister, holding her head up like it's his second grade soccer trophy he never had, followed by the classic Leatherface dance. Technically, the last scene in the movie, though, is after the credits, which shows Leatherface chainsaw in hand, ditching the orphanage and limping his way back to the family slaughterhouse. Speaking of trophies, will Texas Chainsaw Massacre take home the grab trophy, or will we need to stab this one? Well, let's find out. First off are the kills. Now I thought this is where the movie really shined. You could tell that the kills were a huge focal point in not only the writing, but the directing of the movie. As far as my favorite kill goes, I'd have to say it's a tie between the cop towards the beginning of the movie, who had his arm compound fractured in the van, and then Leatherface stabbed it through his neck, a tie between that one and Catherine from the bank, who was sawed in half towards the end of that van scene. I thought both kills were not only creative, but were shot very, very well. Overall, the kills I thought were fantastic. Second are the characters. Now I know this movie has taken some heat for the characters. I thought the acting in this movie was decent. It wasn't the worst and it wasn't the best by any means in this franchise. It was serviceable. Found myself not distracted throughout the movie because of the acting like I had in previous films in the franchise and things like that. Lila, our final girl, in the beginning of the movie was kind of annoying, but I did find myself rooting for her in the second half of the movie. I did like Sally's comeback. I liked that aspect. I wish they would have focused on that a little bit more. I think Sally didn't get enough screen time. I also thought her death at the end of the movie was kind of underwhelming. I thought Leatherface was solid. You know, he's this massive, kind of menacing character in this one. However, he was just too smart in this movie. I just thought he was too smart. He's kind of supposed to be this giant man-child, not somebody who's like setting traps and shit. So that aspect, didn't really love that. But overall, the character's kind of a mixed bag. Third, how did the movie affect either the genre or the franchise at the time? Now, I could be wrong about this, but I believe this is the first ever major horror franchise released exclusively to Netflix, which is a big deal. This movie debuted at number 2 on the Netflix global charts and maintained some pretty strong views after that, which could lead to the next major horror franchise like maybe a Friday the 13th or something like that, kind of following suit and doing the same thing. I hope not though, because I love seeing horror movies in the theater, love seeing stranger reactions. Overall though, despite the huge amount of views on this movie, the reviews were definitely mixed. I would say the effect it had on either the franchise or the genre was kind of so-so. And lastly, how scary is the movie? This movie almost has a kind of a satire vibe to it in a way, if you think about it. Yeah, there are some scenes where the lighting and the grittiness or just the overall setting of that scene is kind of a little bit creepy and kind of a little scary in some ways, but overall I don't look at this as really a scary movie. If you think about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise as a whole, and more specifically the Leatherface character and what makes that character scary, it's kind of that he's a giant man-child that is very, very unpredictable and often does things just based off of impulses and often regrets those and cries about it later. Whereas in this movie, they made him too smart, too calculated. He kind of lost that type of a feel to his character, that unpredictability, which I think takes away from some of the scariness of this movie. But the jump scares in this movie are pretty solid. I know some people get scared about that kind of a thing, but overall, would I look at this as being a scary movie? I wouldn't. And with all that said, I'm gonna go with a grab on this one. I know this movie has gotten a lot of hate on YouTube, but I thought it was stupid fun. This movie was stupid fun. That's kind of how I'd explain it, is stupid fun. I had a good time watching this movie. At no point did I really find myself checking to see how much time was left in the movie. There were some moments where the movie did get kind of dull at times, but then they'd throw in like a cool, unique kill to kind of keep you engaged, which I enjoyed. I don't really know what people were expecting going into watching this movie. Like, were you expecting some Academy Award-winning film? I mean, they gave us good lighting, good kills. They gave us characters we wanted to see killed. I don't really know what people were expecting. Maybe it's because I'm 9 movies into the franchise at this point, but the new change to the kind of the setting and the story and the characters, and I liked the Leatherface solo act. That was a breath of fresh air to me. I kind of liked that. Like I said, it could be because I'm 9 movies into the franchise at this point, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie. By no means is this movie a classic or anything like that, but I do think it's rewatchable. I mean, just even for the kills. So, like I said, I'm gonna go with a grab on this one because the movie was stupid fun. And there you go. That wraps up Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. Whew, holy shit. That was a wild ride. Next week, we take a little left turn and park ourselves right into the 90s in the town of Woodsboro and take a look at Scream, released in 1996. In the meantime, though, I'm Matt McFarland, and you just finished watching Grab or Stab. Thank you everyone for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I did making it. If you enjoy horror content like this, or just horror content in general, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also turn on those notifications. Be on the lookout for new Grab or Stab episodes coming out every single Friday. I also have a Patreon, guys, if you want to support the channel. That will be linked down below in the description as well, along with all of my other social medias and things like that. And like I mentioned, be on the lookout for new Grab or Stab episodes, which come out every single Friday. But until next time, you guys, take care.